While I'm talking about the things that have gone on for several decades, I'm 64 years old. If I die today, it'll look like I was 65 at first pass. I was born in 1960. This is 2025. It's got my eye doctor said, "What's one more candle on the birthday cake?" Hey, slap you on the back. While I'm talking about these things, it's interesting that I garbled a little bit of my talk because you're looking at yourself. It's like a mirror image and it can confuse the senses. But the mirror image that they used is a Palantir. We'll donate Queer Ball and torture him and ripper him as a barometer of social change, they put it. Was the sadism. Mel Gibson is a monster. He's been working with Nosferatu, who, when they burned all the koalas with COVID and stuff. He's been with Wiener and John Lennon all along, and he has a hard on for me. The pack of animals, Mick Jagger, McCartney. And what they've done is they've terrorized me. They've used skin creatures. They poison me in the mouth. They're using me as a flesh and blood effigy that they're burning. Yeah, and it's not. It's adopted by the black man. The Spinner Beanie black man says, "This is my psychology. This is my psychology." It's compensatory coding, but it comes from the mind of the ultra right wing white man. I mean, it was dreamed up by um, to show who's boss by Adolf Hitler, and the black man entrenches by saying, you're insulting me. You don't think I think of these things myself. You don't think it can come into my spinner beanie to exterminate a white to get even." Well, so it's a deadlock with these Huns. Don't tell me what to think, queer about. It's like all child psychology stuff. Seattle UW dialectical is common sense is rolled out because the white man believes in common sense. The Hippocratic Oath is rolled out because the white man believes in the Hippocratic Oath and doesn't practice it. They have the exceptions of pros. The UW dialectical and the VA decided when I was a child that I was a traitor because I sympathized with people who opposed the Vietnam War. I was too young to understand. They organized a crime with the whole machine of Pittsburgh. Every single Italian on the Board of Education knew that Dee Dee had been told to seduce me. They all knew. Kiss evidently knew. Black Sabbath evidently knew. Pink Floyd certainly knew. Penis Gabriel knew. King Crimson refers to her as a gin shop slag. They had these pedos like Chuck Watts from Split Lips saying things to me like, "We'll let you carry our guitars when we're famous." And when I smiled, they said, "Oh, don't think you're a god." And they had me going around like to Robin Trower, "Can I have your autograph, Mr. Trower?" They're monsters. They're murder loving rapist animals. Now they say they want to know everything in my book, all the girls who went to bed with me. The girls would say things like, "Don't get me pregnant." Well, it's them, they were the ones getting themselves pregnant because it was all them seducing me. As soon as they stopped using me for the walrus, Yoko Ono's production system, I stopped sleeping with girls. But they castrated me because here's what they did. It's an old story. It annoys Norm Finkelstein. Sorry to annoy you, Norm. They networked the norms. They had Norm Nasser and Norm before the pedo of mayor of Seattle. Leslie Hoochie me with her. night after night for months and months, but she was still a virgin when we broke up. And they said I threatened her because I said, my dear, Leslie, my dear, please do not imply that I should have raped you. And they said, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? And they came and they started raping everybody in sight because they said I made them twist their ankle. And you're supposed to think, oh, there must be something reasonable about these people. Paul McCartney must have a reason. They were saying things like, you protest too much, that we tortured you. So that means we get to torture you. They locked me out of the emergency room when I was having seizures because they wanted to prove that I was pushy. I was having seizures. They locked me out of the emergency room and said, see, he's pushy. And this came from the mind of people who invented a nerve agent with a neighbor from Attica State Prison in Pittsburgh. And Paul McCartney has a reason that he hates Queerball. And you know what that reason is, right? Because you were from the ship in the Navy that used the atomic forbidden. So Iran wants to settle the score with Allah through the symbolic white. And Bush says, great idea. That's a great idea. We'll bomb Iran back to the Stone Age and we'll let them torment someone like who was just wants to be just like me. And this all comes from the minds of Cyril Wecht and Tamo de Jong. I mean, it's the goblins of the universe. And Paul McCartney must have blood because he's foreign English. And I think one of the reasons why they selected me was the Suez Crisis. My father was at Teachers College with Eisenhower. I mean, that's demonstrably true. He was on Bush's ship in the Navy. That's a fact. He was also a school bus driver in retirement. So the Pittsburgh Mafia set me up as a reckless driver around the school bus. I was a protesting passenger. And I was driven out of town by a man who was arrested for a $6 million museum heist. What does that $6 million matter next to 6 million Jews? And McCartney was saying, this is all because Queerball sniffed was one of the things they were saying I had done. What does that mean? Pittman and Kasparowski and Mark Mancini and Don Oster put paint thinner in a paper bag, in a door on the floor in a paper bag, hours of it. And this was a child who was traumatized and 11, 12 years old. And McCartney must have satisfaction. So he runs a hot wire through my brain from Gail Burstyn. Gail Burstyn, who appears on the cover of Robert Fripp's 1979 album, is completely innocent. She writes the script that McCartney must get satisfaction for. So since father was at Eisenhower, Teachers College with Eisenhower, it's probable there was a kid who was a foreign English. Billy Rod, Billy Flynn, Billy Beck, Carmen Colucci were all faster than me, but the three Billies were a Billy Club who were all faster than me. Billy Flynn, Billy Beck, and Billy Rod were all faster than me. Well, there was a foreign English kid who Rod lived over by Edward Eisen. Remember Poisson-Dora? He lived over by Edward. And they had a little guerrilla theater production scene back in that little Highland Park village. And it was where Cary Grant came from, some of his friends came from, I think. And they had given me like a relatively significant anti-hero role because the Jews and King Edward wanted revenge on Eisenhower for the Suez. So what better than to say, we'll sue the one who had it too easy, sue easy. You know, and this is sort of sleazy mind that went into, I don't know how many deathbed confessions. I suspect Colucci confessed on his deathbed. I suspect that Paul Runco confessed on his deathbed. The Pope Francis knows all this is true. There were obviously people confessing at St. Paul's confessionals over the years that Jimmy Carrere was kidnapped, tortured, and brutally tortured and gassed. But Paul McCartney and Mel Gibson say, but legally he can't get away with tattling anybody because we hold the keys to the media system. And the media system says no. And the priests and nuns aren't allowed, Pope Francis isn't allowed to divulge what the Pittsburgh police sergeants all know that Quirball was tortured. Then they've heard these confessions. They know who Pittman was. As soon as they heard the name Pittman, they said Robert Fripp and Patricia Fripp had better pray on hands and knees. It never gets around what sort of people had possession of Jimmy Carrere, James McRondon Carrere, as a terrorized, horrified, desperately frightened 12-year-old. As soon as they heard the name Pittman, they said, uh-oh, clamp down on that. And the NAACP come running. So don't you worry, Master Charlie. We will never let that get around. And Robert Fripp's going to give us that postcard. You hear me? He's going to give me that postcard. He's going to give me a hard-boiled egg, too.